the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
A state of control.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment.
Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that highlights the control, programming, and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name's Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us. This is an interesting first for us, and sitting across from me, and this hasn't happened in a long time, is my co-host here, Uncle Richie, Rich Fragosa. How are you, Rich?
It is mellow but super hot Las Vegas greetings right now. But this actually is our first. This is our first, well, not quite live, but live to disc show that we've been able to record with our good friends. So, man, it's great to see you. You know, it is. I was in Barcelona last month, and it was great to finally kind of get in the presence of people. But it has been a hug fest. I think there's like 2 years of hugs that have been pent up entering all of these rooms.
Absolutely, and we didn't mention, but we are in Las Vegas for InfoComm 2022. And with us here are two of our regular guests, and we're glad to have them join us in person as well. The first is Dave Hatz from Room Ready. Dave, how are you?
Doing awesome. Again, I'll echo the same thing. It's just great to be back in person with all you guys.
So great. And last but not least is Mike Krejci from CTI. Mike, how are you?
I'm great, Steve. It's been really good being back at InfoComm and seeing people I haven't seen in a while or ever met in person. Me and Rich have talked many times. We've never actually met in person until today, so it's really good to be here.
And previous times, obviously new promotions, new gigs for you. When we had you on earlier, broadcasts, Mike had different roles, but definitely moving up. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm Director of Programming now at Conference Technologies of our centralized programming group. So our centralized group does 95% of the programming for our company, and we test everything in-house, get it sent out to hopefully speed up things when it gets out to the client site to make our jobs as fast as efficient as possible.
And you did something really cool, which was, again, Mike is reticent to talk about himself, but he spearheaded, quite a bit of their internal education efforts. And so it was just last week, wasn't it? So we're recording on the 7th, June 7th, but I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago we held a programming summit of our centralized team, got everybody in the same room from across the country, and it was the first time that group's ever been in one room. So normally we work on 9 different projects in 9 different directions, and being able to collaborate, rejuvenate everybody, and get on the same page, figure out some strategic goals. It was really good.
Wow, very, very, very cool. Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing, and I thought maybe we'd cover today, is where is programming headed? We talk about this quite a bit, and we're all here probably to see what the future holds. I think that's why people come to trade shows, and that's why we are here to collaborate. And we've talked about modern programming languages. We've talked about no programming required. It seems to be a little bit all over the map, but there is, I think, a lot more of a push these days to looking at software development methodologies. Rich, I know that you oversee a team a lot of times, and you look at things from more of an architecture standpoint, and you're able to assign tasks and roles and bring in specialists to really tackle the particular needs of a project, and also look at projects, especially on a large scale, as subsystems.
A big part of it is, we've been talking about the no program required hopes for the past few years. And I think that we're starting to see some traction in terms of integrator-specific tools that are great, because they are tools that can flatten the curve once you stay within the box. And we've always talked about, my line has always been that if you've got the Panda Express version of it, you know it's going to be the same in Anchorage as it's going to be in Brooklyn. And those are great. And there are tools that integrators need to be able to get in, deploy quickly. But what I'm noticing lately about the show and just with the exhibitors, and I've got the good fortune of being able to interview the exhibitors while I'm going through each of these booths, is that having to deal with the term meeting equity and a CAN solution, they are not coming together right now. And so what we're finding is that much like the old days, I think somebody said a little post on social media the other day, which was, with supply chain issues, especially right now, the fact that, we're having hardware issues, is that we're cobbling together manufacturers all over the place, and it's like the 90s all over again for many of us, where instead of a simple integrated solution, there's like 5 different solutions that we are just absolutely, Allen wrenching these things together. And as somebody said the other day, they were using their digital duct tape to keep it all in.
And that's how we started, though,
Yeah.
isn't it? I mean, we started with a bunch of disparate pieces of gear, and that's what the control system did, is it unified them. And some of that has been lost over the years, I think, because more manufacturers are trying to play in every arena, and they're also trying to sell single brand ecosystems. And that model may be challenged right now because, as you said, if you can't get a part, then what?
Right.
And if you're not API capable, then you can't even make that work, where you're integrating that one last piece to be able to make the system operate. And I think that's what's holding up a lot of projects these days.
Well, and the conferencing platform is a new variable to that equation too, because we're trying to integrate all those pieces, but when you have a conferencing platform that is trying to set the experience, to simplify, the experience, to standardize it, now we've got constraints where we may not be able to control. We may, and it's not for lack of trying, it's just there's a walled garden for the other half. Yep. And so, again, to your point, Rich, I agree 100% that the experience is not being delivered, and we're trying to get creative and think outside the box of all these disparate things with cases where we can't actually. Like, we can't achieve the final goal. We've got to try to get as close as we can, and then hope with the next software release from the platform or from the manufacturer that it doesn't just shake up the whole ball and send us right back to where we were.
Well, and then Mike, I mean, you're the head of a programming team for an integrator.
Right.
So your challenges have got to be even doubled on top of that.
Right, because we're trying to figure out, not only what's available today, but that we're not running in 30 different directions across the company. Right? We're trying to focus on what can we get, where should we set our blinders to, what can we install, what can we deploy, and how do we train our folks to know how to use it, how to configure it, how to set it up, how to design for it, so we're not just using everything onto the market. There's 1,000 booths here. We can't go buy from every one of them, otherwise we'll be a mess. So we have to pick, certain solutions that we know we can do over and over and over again and replicate without having to retrain every day.
So is it a chicken and an egg thing now? Because, as Dave said, you have the conferencing platforms, and a lot of times those are ingrained within an organization, and that's probably not going to change that quickly. So is it to get them to be more flexible and accommodating, or do you have to look at it from the other perspective and say we want to come in with solutions that we know are proven and promote that to a client and say that we're going to take care of you here?
The first question now on any client is, what's your platform? Right? And that wasn't a question we asked a couple of years ago, because we could make it work with, the interop back in H323 and, with video conferencing, you could do a Cisco and a Polycom, and they'd work together in meetings, and video meetings were prevalent, but you were using the room more locally than you were for the far end. Now your first question has to be, are you Zoom? Are you Teams? Are you Google? Are you WebEx? Which one? We want to do it all. Okay, let's pump the brakes. how are we going to do it all? Pick one. Which one are you going to support in your organization? And let's go that way.
So, Dave, I guess from your perspective, are clients coming asking for input as to what is easier to integrate with, or they're saying, this is what we're going to use, and you're going to figure out how to make it work?
From a device standpoint, it's sort of a mix. We have some that are very set on, they've figured out the direction they think they want to go, and others that are saying, just get me there. Tell me what it takes. I think for us, what we see the real challenge being, sort of what Mike said, is that there's some companies who are set in one standard, one platform. There's some that know they're going to go on a journey from the platform they're on today to the next one. And there's others that are still, after 2 years of this pandemic, are still not, they just haven't made a decision. And I think for us, one of the big challenges is trying to lock them down in what are their thoughts really, what are their real expectations, not so much asking them what do you want, but really determining what are the hard variables, what really are they set on, what are the constants, I guess, frankly. And with that, okay, let us try to propose a solution and an experience that delivers a significant amount of your wish list, probably not all of it though. That in a lot of cases, the days of we're going to custom tailor every last detail for the entire experience, we know what level of effort that really takes to go that last mile. Do we really need to fight that battle? Or, I don't like to say it, but is good enough good enough? So,
Rich, are we at a point now where there's more, we look at things more from a bigger perspective of, hey, I need to be able to mix and match here, even from a control standpoint, instead of being dedicated to one control vendor. Can you see it now that we're looking outside of the of our traditional world of control?
Well, I think we have to, and a bigger part of it is that it's not even us, it's not even our industry. The conversations that I've been starting to have with clients, because again, I bridge resi and commercial, is that, okay, I know that this is a question that you're asking me in the middle of 2022, but I need to start talking to you about what I can actually execute in 2023. And it is requiring first, because again, nobody likes throwing good money after bad. And the hardest conversation right now is that, which is, well, I want it. I know you want it. It's the toddler. It's like, I'm arguing with a toddler on this one. It's like, I understand you want it. We have a way to get you to, like Dave was saying, to good enough. I said, obviously, it's not where we want to be long term, but it puts you on a road down to that next step for 23 to the solution. And and there are difficult conversations that are going on that as integrators, as consultants, as everything else, is you also have to decide from a company standpoint, do I want to get paid now on the short term, maybe make a buck, know that I'm providing a subpar solution possibly, and maybe not have that client come 23? Or do I have the hard conversation and say, we've got a choice. How are you going to spend it? How are we as control system advocates going to position? And that's a conversation that I think is starting to happen a little bit between integrators and kind of back channels of like, how are you handling this? But I know that some of the companies and people that I talk to around the country, I'm like, look, it's, can you weather it? Because that is becoming the question too. It is, we need stuff to program. And if the stuff to program isn't there, then that's where everything's happening, where I can guarantee that all four of us have looked at stuff that we never thought that we would be touching again.
Yeah.
That has always worked great, right? And the only reason why we stopped using it is because we were told that we got to use the new one, even though the old one was working great.
Right.
I'm finding that I'm having to go back and I'm playing my greatest hits, and going, hey, this is going to be where we're at. But I've got to be able to play the hits that you showed up to the concert for, right? I'm not playing my B-side stuff. This is the stuff that was there that you bought the album for, and that's the conversations that we're having, which is okay. It is how can we cost effectively, take a look at it. The manufacturers are saying, well, I don't want you to sell the old stuff. Well, it's like, well, again, I know what you want. But
yeah,
it is becoming it, and for me, especially in resi, and I'm starting to see it in commercial. And Mike and I had a conversation about this about a month ago. I'm starting to see the call for voice, and I'm starting to see the maturation of that market and some of the partners that I'm working with, in a different space, on that. And that's just the whole brand new ball of wax, which is, we have it. We have C-level executives who are seeing commercials who are saying, I want to be able to come in and say, start the meeting. Great. I love the idea. I love your enthusiasm. Let me tell you what it's going to take to get from here to there. And that goes back into what are you using it. And so it's an exciting time in that. And I think that for our company, it's forced us to really spend time with what makes us uncomfortable, because that is kind of the hallmark of a company, right? Can you look in the eye of what makes you uncomfortable and decide to grow from it, or do you back away from it and go, gosh, I really just hope it's going to be like it always was, and it's not. And that's the key for anybody listening to this show is it's not gloom and doom. It's just like I've always said, is be brutal with your weaknesses, right? Be brutal with them, find it out, and then see what you can do to switch it around, because that's what's going to create your longevity. Whether you're working as a programmer, whether you're heading a programming team, whether like you and I, we own companies that specialize in this. It is, and if any of the indications that we see of a downturn are coming, we start seeing that double whammy coming in as well, given the fact that meeting equity is something that's going to be happening. So our enterprise customers, aren't going to be getting as much real estate to put 1,000 huddle spaces in. I'm in the middle of the Silicon Valley. It is a very real thing right now that the office space usage from companies is shrinking. So from the commercial side, you're now going to become a residential integrator, whether you want to or not, because of the meeting equity needs for work from home.
I wanted to touch on something that I think is kind of interesting and scary at the same point, but when we talk about not being able to have equipment to program on, where does that leave us? I mean, and if you think about it, it sounds kind of silly, because programming, everybody is used to just programming in the environment that is in front of them, and that's one of those things that really doesn't run out of supply. So Mike, I'll let you take that.
I think one of the things we're having to do is pivot, right? Is our programmers who are specialists in a certain language or a certain platform or certain devices are having to pick up new skills. Okay, we can't get this box, but we can get this box. Oh, well, I've got to learn this now. And they're taking that training. Luckily, one of the benefits of being a little bit slow, not having stuff to program, is we've got a little bit of extra time. So we can spend a couple extra hours a week going to dive into that new software, dive into that new platform, expand our knowledge so we can try and find out, some other platforms to do in other ways to keep product going out the door that is available.
Well, and I mean, if you think back 20 years from now, or 20 years ago, we were doing things different than we are today. And incrementally, we evolved over that time. Right now, it feels uncomfortable because the pace has accelerated a bit, but we've always adapted. Right. We've always moved, back in the day, you remember, Rich, there were two vendors.
Yep.
And you were all in with one or all in with the other, and gradually, over a few years, it shifted from one to the other, and then it shifted back some, but it was sort of a ping pong between those two, and we saw it. Developers had to get outside their comfort zone maybe and start to learn the other one. Well, now there's more options, sort of what you were saying there. And we can't be afraid of that change. We can't be afraid to embrace it. I've said it before, you make your own fortune. And so you will struggle to be effective and to be relevant if you just stay and try to do it the same way you've always done. One of the sayings I give my team a lot is, you can't keep trying to do the same thing and just do it harder. You've got to be smart about it.
So that kind of brings us to where we are right now, and in that we're seeing that pendulum go from one side to the other. What are we looking for at an event like this? What do we hope to walk away with? Are we looking to find a trend? Are we looking to see somebody coming out with a solution, or are we just using this as a way to have good conversations to figure out, how do we come up with those proper solutions, or how are other people tackling those challenges?
I got to say, without overtly saying it, the manufacturers are like, we've got to come up with virtual solutions.
Yeah.
And they are all, none of them are saying why they came up with them. They're just saying, look, we did it. And that's fine. I'm seeing DSPs, virtual DSPs. I just had a interview with Atlas IED. They're coming up with modules. And they went, hey, we're going to go ahead and start. These are things that, from the control system standpoint, we've always looked at being agnostic as much as we can. Mm-hmm. Manufacturers are seeing that same writing on the wall going, how are we going to keep our dealers? How are we going to keep them when we do start making hardware again? They are seeing that, they can no longer get by with, well, you should have bought a lot of it earlier.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so of the manufacturers that I've started to get a chance to talk, and we're at day one of the show, but that is something that I saw. I saw it at ISE. I saw it, the grumblings of it in Europe, but I was really curious to see how it was going to happen stateside. And it is definitely continuing that trend stateside. It's getting better. That's the thing, is that it was the first few versions of some of these virtual DSPs was rough. But it's getting better because there are firmware updates, there are software updates. They're figuring out best practices on, okay, we've now had 1,000 case studies of how this thing blew up. We know how not to make it blow up anymore, but it's just like we do in control systems programming, right? They're learning from a manufacturer level what we've been doing for 30 years, right? Which is every way possible to make it fail.
The interesting thing, though, I'm starting to see, too, is more awareness of, as you virtualize, where does the software really reside? And that is a really important factor that I don't think has been given enough attention in the discussion of virtualization. Mike, we had lunch yesterday together, and we were talking about it. The fact that compute, in a lot of regards, is just compute, but what we do is real time. What we do needs dedicated resources. Now, that can be on, whether it's on a black box or a hypervisor or a Raspberry Pi. We can argue all day what's the right path, but realizing that the decision of where we host that, what the resources are they reserved, protected for our purposes, so that our software can operate as expected all the time, is a new consideration that we haven't had to think about when we're in the black box world that we've been, because that's the development that the vendors have done for us. And so as I've walked around and had some discussions even here just this morning, I'm hearing that, both an awareness of that, but also a volunteering of that being a consideration that needs to be discussed. And I'm actually a little surprised that a few of the vendors I've talked with are fairly open that they're really committed to giving options, not to just saying this one methodology is the way it needs to be, which I think is really healthy. I think that's, what's going to make the concept of virtualization of any software certainly have a chance at success.
And I think one of the things with virtualization, like you're talking, is who owns that piece of metal, right? At the end of the day, it comes down to a piece of metal that goes in a rack behind a display that we're having to load an OS onto. Right? We're AV guys, right? We've learned control programming. We can do that. We're not good at hardening a Linux box. That's not skill sets we have. It's ones we have to build up. It's a blind spot, right? Like, it's a weakness, and we have to find it and figure it out. But again, the manufacturers have been doing that for years. I wish they could do it now.
Well, and to where, Steve, where you sort of started our discussion here, the scale of it. Even if we're doing bespoke solutions every time, the scale of, if we're going to harden that appliance, Mike, as you talk, we have to harden it the same way to a standard, to a checklist every single time. We can't just go off of, oh, I know OSs. Here, I'm just going to do this and that and this and that, because someday we're going to be asked about that. And we need to be able to show up and say, this is my process. This is, the way I'm going to do it. And again, this is all before we get to talking the software on it, where our forte is. But it's something also that I see falling to our community, because we are the closest thing that our firms have to someone who can figure this out.
Sounds exciting. It sounds like we, although it's a challenge, now all of a sudden we've put a spotlight on what we do, and this to me is like truly IT meets AV.
Well, in my mind, it's an opportunity, because we've talked about how do we stay relevant. Well, this is an opportunity for us to stay. We still bring value. This is how we can be relevant as an industry, as a group within that industry. We still bring that value. Don't give up on custom developed software. Don't give up on configured software. Don't give up on what we do really well in making sure that experience is delivered, because the alternative is we're just going to accept what the black box does, and it's good enough. That on its own perceived as good enough. And certainly that has other consequences.
Well, and it's not like a corporate IT department is going to want to take on one more thing,
right?
Especially this. And that really does become what you were talking about the exciting part and the opportunity is that they've got enough threats across their corporate IT to deal with. To then throw in oh, by the way, now can you guys find a server where you can host this for us? And by the way, well, what does it do? Well, it turns the TV on. You're joking, right? Those are the responses that you're getting. And it is that opportunity to, again, how are you doing it from a control system standpoint is, again, becoming that expert, the deployment expert, which is the entire ecosystem, right? The soup to nuts, the liaison between. Because again, if you don't got parts to put it in program, you got to get, like you're saying, it's the time to bone up on things, looking at cybersecurity, looking at all of the threats that are coming on. Because at hardening, those devices, the minute that you take a virtualized device with software that you're interfacing with, whether you believe it is your responsibility or not, you're still accountable for any holes that are in there, for any vulnerabilities that are in there. Because I can guarantee the manufacturer who provides the software to put on the stuff isn't going to take any accountability for it. So you're still putting yourself on the line. So there has to be that ability to, hold the line for the IT department to get the results that are out there. And it does. It takes time. And it becomes a matter of, okay, well, how do I make money on it? Well, you take the time, you invest in it, you do your R&D, and it becomes part of your suite of services. Right. Do you need this part from our a la carte menu? No, we don't need it. We got corporate IT. Great, no problem. We'll interface with them. Oh, yeah, they're overburdened. And we need, have you had that discussion with them? Because, again, what do we always have with control systems, right? Oh, well, we bought the box. We thought that was included. Well, that is the good news about software now, right? It is the subscription. It's like, okay, well, great. We'll give you version 1 of this. And, next year, if you want to go ahead and work your way through to V2. And that's where I see the opportunity, that we're seeing more and more is the ability to readdress a lot more organically and a lot faster and effectively the growth of these systems. Because software is moving so fast, clients, it's a tough sell. But clients are understanding that, hey, no, this is no longer, I see you, we put in, a DSL line, or, an ISDN line, that we pulled in for our video conferences for Tokyo and London to talk to each other, and we're not going to see you for 8 years, right? That cycle, that life cycle of when the guy with the laptop, who are we? That's the guy with the laptop. Here he goes again, right? But as the guy with the laptop, being able to, that cycle has shortened. Are they absolutely the mammoth home run projects? No, I don't necessarily think you're going to see those anymore because the industry has changed. And it's much like, again, from Resi, there's a whole lot of guys who used to make their living off of $20,000 plasmas. They ain't around anymore because they ain't selling $20,000 plasmas. So, it is neat seeing that opportunities, because again, it's easy to get into the doom and gloom of, here we go again. These are the things that are going to drive us into the ground. And then, during the course of these discussions, being able to kind of go, you're kind of right there. I didn't think about it that way. There is that opportunity, which, like Mike just said, there's a core business just in hardening the stuff.
Yeah.
And if you could become the expert in that, you manufacturer support, client support, all of these other things, you become the go-to people. And so, great bit of advice, Mike.
Seriously, the system design then becomes putting software applications together and making them work over a network is really, and so although, as you're saying, there's a challenge involved, the opportunity is there, because what we were looking at a couple of years ago was we don't need you anymore because everything is no programming required, and we've become more of a configuration world, and programmers are what are you guys going to be doing from now on? I don't know. Do we think that this was going to be inevitable, or did we need this type of a shock to the system in order to look at things differently?
I think it accelerated it. I think we've been on this journey to really a software-defined world for, in our industry for a long time, but it very much accelerated it.
Yeah. Yeah, the UC platforms, they kind of led the way of, hey, we can turn the display on and off. But we found out it doesn't always work that way. There's the systems in a box don't fully solve every need. They still have to be customized because, we need to do this one little thing extra. Well, the system in a box doesn't do that one little extra thing. So we're still needed. I think our skills are changing. What we're doing on a daily basis is changing, but we're still there. We're still needed. I don't see us going away.
I think that's a good place for us to wrap that.
That's a great place. I'm here.
It's good, some positive vibes. So thank you guys for being a part of this, and especially for taking time off the floor to spend with Rich and I. And Mike Krejci from CTI, how can people get in touch with you, learn what you're up to?
Absolutely. You can check out CTI at cti.com or the Mike Krejci on all the socials, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can find me there.
Excellent. And Dave Hatz from Room Ready, how can people get in touch with you and learn what you're up to?
So roomready.com. I'm probably most accessible on LinkedIn, but float around the other social medias too.
Well, I thank you guys both for being here and spending some time with us, and two of our more famed guests. So thanks for doing that. And as we approach our 100th episode, we'll probably be calling on you again. So Rich, this was wonderful.
Yeah. Like I said, brought out the heavy hitters, and thanks to Steve, and actually also to our friend Chris Netto for being able to provide the venue for us. So it was very cool having a meeting of the minds here. But obviously, I'm sure you're going to ask how you can find Uncle Richie.
Yeah.
So you can find me on Twitter, on the socials, at rfragosa. Hopefully, the best place that you're going to find me is here with my partner, Steve Greenblatt, as we go to the road to 100 on our way to our 100th episode here on AVNation. And in fact, you actually, this will probably be posting after the show, but I am live at the show floor actually covering InfoComm 2022 for AVNation. So you'll find many, many videos of me in the future talking with many manufacturers about what's the latest and greatest here. And so you'll find that our InfoComm 2022 coverage of for AVNation, we recorded Resi Week earlier. We've got State of Control. Uncle Richie's going for the hat trick. We'll have AV Week at the end of the week, as well as our complete coverage of the show, which you'll find on AVNation TV. Please find us there, covering all of the vertical markets that we serve.
I think we have to make this a habit. I'll go to CEDIA, you come to InfoComm and ISE, and we'll be all set.
That'll be it. We got it. We'll do it live.
On the road with Uncle Richie.
I like it. That might be a new show.
For me, you could find me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. Twitter and LinkedIn are probably where I hang out the most and do a little bit of Sunday chat on AV in the AM. You could join us there. As we mentioned, Chris Netto was kind enough to invite us to spend some time in his booth here at the Starin booth at InfoComm 22, and we really enjoy that. And as you can see on the wall, I have a nice setup here. And as Rich said, please check out AVNation coverage of the show, as well as a bunch of other great shows, the weeklies and the monthlies that are produced, and the great content there as always. And please share some of our shows, the ones that you think are the most important. And as we take the road to 100, we want to include more guests and make sure that we're covering the topics that our audience wants to hear. And I think that's what we have for today, and this has been A State of Control.